Welcome to Ali Fitness Podcast, a weekly production all about bringing health into fitness. Pamela Gold is the founder of HACKD Fitness, New York City's first biohacking fitness studio, open since fall 2018. Pam grew up on her family's apple farm in upstate New York, graduated from Yale University, and then entered the business world in NYC, where she was the point person on the IPO at the age of 24. A mum of two, Pamela left the workforce to start a family and became passionate about fitness and wellness through her own postpartum journey of losing, I believe, 40 pounds. As a personal trainer, helping other mums reach their goals, she would often work out for up to 4 hours a day with her clients. But when she went back to the work, running a company, she suddenly found herself with 20 minutes a day for fitness as opposed to 4 hours. She started researching more efficient ways to achieve her fitness goals and actually discovered fitness techniques and methods that she had never thought possible. She now works out less than 40 minutes a week and is in the best shape of her life, all using data to confirm what is working and what isn't. And she shares all of this at her fitness in Manhattan studio, HACKD. So if you haven't checked it out, it's spelled HACKD, and we'll obviously put everything in the show notes. She is also the author of Find More Strength, 5 Pillars to Unlock Unlimited Power and Strength, a book that connects physical, mental, and inner strength in a practical, relatable guide. So it's my pleasure to have you today on the show, Pamela.
Oh, thank you so much, Ali. It's such an honor and a pleasure.
Excellent. I mean, there's so many ways we can go here, and I just want to, start by asking you, how did you get into health and fitness yourself? How did you find yourself, getting fit, losing weight, and finding this awesome thing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it always starts with the beginning. In the beginning, I mean, growing up on a farm, I was super active. I was the youngest and the only girl of kind of the squadron of cousins and my brother and some neighbors. And so I was very active from a young age because I wanted to fit in and I wanted to keep up. And so I was always super active. And I played sports. I played volleyball through high school. And then I went to college where I was not a Division I volleyball player. So I switched to more intramurals. I always loved being active. It wasn't until really after I had my kids, though, that it became a much more pointed focus because I was someone who could kind of get by through my 20s and my early 30s, I guess, not necessarily being really aware of a lot of the nutritional things that you and I are now aware of and very passionate about. I could get away with not being really focused with any kind of exercise routine. And everything was good enough, right? My energy level was good enough. I looked good enough with clothes on. I think I looked okay naked. It's like everything's relative, right? But I could kind of get away with a lot of poor choices and not such a healthy lifestyle. And then once I had my kids, it was like, whoa, what just happened? Because my metabolism just really took a huge turn. And when you have little ones, you lose yourself in that post baby, fog, especially when you have a toddler and a newborn. And so I ended up regaining all of my pregnancy weight while I was kind of postpartum with my second. And that's when I had this big wake up call and I started prioritizing fitness. I started prioritizing at first just dieting, then I just was like, oh, I'm going to restrict what I eat, but I didn't eat better food. I just ate less crap. And then I was bruising and I felt my energy level, depleted. And so I self-studied nutrition and I really just got myself healthy. And then I helped other people because once you do something, then of course people are going to say, hey, can you help me too? And of course we want to be of service. So it was this very organic path that led me into being a personal trainer and going to yoga school and really shifting to this primary focus of health and wellness.
And Pamela, do you remember the moment where you thought, okay, I'm actually going to do something about this? I guess it was after your second child. And then,
oh, yes.
Do you remember?
I'll never forget that moment.
Do you tell us what that was like? And then do you remember the steps that you took? And
Sure.
You also mentioned that you you started getting healthy and whatever, but it sounds like you actually didn't get healthy to start with to lose the weight. Was that a fair call? Was it just about calorie restriction?
Yeah, so it's funny because, I mean, we do our best from whatever our level of knowledge is, and then we learn and then we do better. So, no shame, some healthy guilt. But basically the way that it happened for me was our scale, the batteries died, and so I didn't have access to weigh myself for a bunch of months, which was fine at the time. I was like, I just had a baby. I don't want to weigh myself anyway. And then it was the first warm day after the winter of having a newborn. And I went to put on shorts and none of my shorts fit. The only shorts that fit were my maternity shorts. And my husband walked in and he said, "Oh, honey, those aren't very flattering." And I was like, "F you. Thank you. I'm aware." And I was like, I got what's going on here? Nothing fits. Because when you go through the winter in sweats, you can kind of like somehow not notice when you gain weight. And then I put the batteries in the scale and I weighed myself, and there was this just absolute horror that really was shame at the time. I didn't know enough. I wasn't healthy enough from the inside out for it to not be shame. But to be completely honest, I felt a tremendous amount of shame that I had let myself, all this judgment, this self-judgment that I had back then, which thank goodness I've learned how to reframe and handle in a much healthier way. But back then I didn't know. And I was ashamed. And I literally called everybody near and dear to me and told them, it's like, I weigh 100 and I think it was like 48 pounds or 158. It was 158 pounds. And I was horrified. I'm like, and they're like, "We love you anyway." I'm like, well, I don't love myself. It was this whole very raw, vulnerable period. And then like you kind of reflected back, I didn't know the right steps to take. And so I started with going to the gym because I had been a gym rat at different points in my life, get kind of bit by that bug. And, it's so great from a mental health perspective. You feel so good when you're going to the gym. So that was kind of an easy route. I knew how to at least go to the gym and work with a personal trainer. And I had access to the resources to be able to afford a personal trainer, which is a blessing, access to a gym, which was a blessing. So there were certain things that I had access to that made it easier. And then, like I had said, I restricted calories without having any nutritional awareness, without learning about, macro and micro nutrition. And the first couple weeks when I was just merely eating less of the same processed fake food like substances, my body was clearly not doing well. And so that's what prompted me to start studying nutrition. And I was a microbiology biochem major at Yale. So I do have this hard science foundational understanding of how the body works. But somehow I had this adolescent bravado that it didn't apply to my body. So once I started studying nutrition, I really felt even more shame that somehow I didn't connect the dots and apply this to my own body. And luckily, I've forgiven myself for doing the best that I could from where I was at the time. And I basically started eating healthy. I started eating for nutrition density and then, testing and assessing, seeing what my body really responded well to. And then I surpassed, the level of fitness and body shape that I had before I had kids and definitely got into better shape than I had ever imagined.
Wow. And then how did you transition from, I guess, doing almost 4 hours of exercise a day and then that transition into, I guess, discovering a different way to exercise?
Yeah. So it was by necessity. I think so often that's how life nudges us. But I went back to work running a company and being a mom and a wife and taking on this new responsibility. And because I didn't work full time, again, I was lucky enough or had the flexibility to make that choice that I stayed home with my kids and had support, had help through those early years. And then when I went back to work, I still knew that being a mom was going to be my primary focus. And so the job that I took, I definitely baked in some flexibility that, okay, I'm going to bring my kids to school. I'm going to pick my kids up from school. then in between there, somehow I'm going to help run a company. So there was a lot of pressure on those hours that I had the freedom and flexibility to practice self-care. And so I had much less time for self-care and had to squeeze that in. And it was really like a 20-minute a day, if I was lucky, window. And so, I did the best that I could, knowing what I knew about high intensity interval training. But 20 minutes, even by the old standards of what I thought I understood about exercise science, I definitely had limiting beliefs, and I wasn't really as focused, I think, with the protocols as I could have been had I known what I know now. But I had a wake up call. A friend took me to Tone House, which I'm sure you're familiar with Tone House in New York
Mm-hmm.
City. Yeah, that place is no joke. It's a serious workout. And I went with my friend, and I remembered being in this kind of prime athletic, condition. And so I participated as if I still had that level of cardiovascular fitness. But after that workout, I went back to my office and I literally couldn't see the rest of the day, Allie. And I had to have one of my teammates Google it because I couldn't use the computer to be like, what's wrong? Why can't I see? And it means that from a cardiovascular fitness perspective, I didn't have the capacity to deliver that oxygen to my brain and the rest of my body. So my body prioritized my brain and was taking oxygen from my eyes. And so I couldn't see, my eyes couldn't function. So my brain had enough oxygen. I was like, well, that's a bad sign. That was like a wake up call. I was like, I have to figure out how to get my fitness level back in this smaller amount of time. And that's when I started, just naturally, organically being exposed to, because I've always been a voracious reader and, consumer of wisdom. So podcasts, obviously, we love podcasts. I listened to podcasts, and I listened to a podcast one day that talked about some of these principles, talked about the Body by Science book. It was a guy named Lorenzo Delano who works with Mind Valley. And Mind Valley has a program called 10X Fitness. And it was those principles that I ended up wanting to learn more of. I reached out to Lorenzo. I got him to coach me from South Africa. And I started integrating what he was teaching me into my own fitness routine. And then he started turning me on to some of the pieces of equipment and trying to find them in New York and getting to use them. And then I went to a conference out in San Diego where I used kind of the latest version of one of the machines that I had found an older version of in New York. And I was just obsessed because it's so effective, so efficient, just so next level. The feedback that it gives you, the data it gives you, the opportunity it gives you to work so hard in such a small amount of time, so safely. I was like, gosh, I want this. How can no one in New York have this? I can't be the only person that wants this. So that's what got me to start HACKD. And I just built a business around originally just the strength training piece of equipment. And it's like, all right, well, if we have the strength training equipment, what would be the cardio piece? What would be the recovery pieces? And that's how I came to HACKD.
Wow. So when you say HIIT training, most of our listeners are going to hear HIIT and they're going to think maybe like CrossFit style, AMRAP, as hard as you can go for as long as you can, sort of within a 20-minute, 30-minute all-out effort is sort of what is sort of what the general, I guess, thought of HIIT, understanding is. And when you refer to HIIT, can you explain the philosophy behind behind HIIT and how it all works?
Sure. So I think that there's so much great research that supports that most people, and I always say, Allie, and I know you know this too, right? Just because something works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Try it, test and assess, right? And so, the research is pretty strong that pretty much across the board, if you use these high intensity interval training protocols, and there's a lot of different ones that have been tested, and I don't know if you're like me, I really love research. I love scientific, evidence-based research. And there are a lot of these research studies are flawed because you really can't control for everything. And so as much as I love research, I also really value, okay, I'm going to try it for myself and I'm going to try it with my clients. And so just putting that pin in there because, there's a bunch of different, high intensity interval training protocols that there's a lot of research around, like Tabata, or, Tabata is usually 2 on, 1 off intervals, right?
It's normally a 20-minute on, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off for 4 minutes.
Yeah. And so that's one of the protocols that maybe your listeners are familiar with. And like Equinox does Tabata style group fitness classes where you're just oscillating in some, high intensity interval. Maybe you're going to do burpees. Maybe you're going to do squat jumps. Maybe you're going to do push-ups, for 20 seconds and then rest for 10 and then go on to the next routine. And like you said, you can do that for 20 minutes and you're going to get a killer workout because the research shows that these bursts of close to maximal level exertion followed by these little rests, which then, give you enough, time to catch your breath that you can do it again. Gets far better results than a steady state cardiovascular workout does. And when we say results, we look at, body composition, heart rate, being lowered at rest, blood pressure being lowered, just the general kind of across the board metabolic markers that we look at to see if our health is indeed improving. And so when I talk about high intensity interval training, HIIT training, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about there's this high intensity interval where you're going to work really, really hard. And then there's an interval where you're going to rest. And there's some ratio because there's a million different ratios that one can look at and try and choose. A lot of them have been researched. One of them is called the Wingate protocol, which is actually the protocol that one of the pieces of equipment that we use at HACKD utilizes. And that protocol is a 20-second, it's a re-HIIT. And gosh, reduced exertion. Yeah. So the RE is the reduced exertion, high intensity interval training. And that's what the bike we use at HACKD is, because you literally are only going to do 2 20-second sprints that's sandwiched by, a warm up, a recovery, and then a cool down. And so literally in a under 9-minute period of time, you're only doing 40 seconds of all out effort, right? And the trick about it, and Allie, I know you know this, our idea of all out effort is limited by our ideas, our thoughts. And as you know, and I know, our brains play tricks on us. And so, our brain is wired for survival. And so it will tell us that we have to stop and that we're at that level of all out exertion well before we actually are. And that's just for survival, because if another tiger's coming around the corner, if we really go all out and we really get 100% depletion, then that other tiger is going to eat us. We're toast. And so our brain is wired for survival to protect us. And so, one of the things that I love about what we're doing at HACKD is we're using data, we're using artificial intelligence to support this high intensity interval training. And we're not leaving it up to, just your sense of, are you really going all out here or not? Because we want something that's going to hold us accountable, because it's hard. I mean, accountability, when you talk to people about what's slowing them down or giving them, trouble about making it to the gym, it's people, of course, say time, but then it's accountability and motivation. So, all this goes hand in hand. And the high intensity interval stuff, you can use it in strength training. You can use it in functional training. You can use it cardiovascular fitness wise. But generally speaking, when I think about high intensity interval, I'm thinking about cardiovascular fitness, because that's why we're pushing ourselves to get our heart rate up. We're trying to get this whole system, which isn't just our heart, it's our lungs, it's the delivery system, for the oxygen to then get to the cells, and then to have the cells be able to take the oxygen out of the blood and get it integrated into cellular function. And so, the high intensity interval training is about that cardiovascular fitness piece. And so that's the goal when we talk about cardio. And I like to educate too that a lot of people have an old paradigm around cardio being about burning calories. And I'm sure I read enough of your bio and have consumed enough of your stuff to know that you and I are in the same camp, that we really want people to understand that we don't work out to burn calories. We work out to improve all our systems. And you may not burn as many calories during that phase of exercise if you do a high intensity interval training workout. However, that afterburn, where you continue to burn calories at a higher rate the whole rest of the day, that is real. And so there's a lot more going on. And I think both of us are so passionate about, educating and leveling up our own understanding of our biology and our own understanding of how we can use some of these protocols. But high intensity interval training is definitely a core foundational tenet in everything that I hold near and dear.
Wow. And Pamela, so the 9 minutes on the bike with the 40 seconds of actually all out effort. And I'm assuming you're referring to your Carol bike.
Yes,
right?
The Carol bike. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. And so how often would you, or does the science say that you should do that? And obviously it depends on a lot of things, what the person's goals are. But let's say, for argument's sake, the person wants to be fit and healthy for long term.
Yeah.
What would you sort of give as a protocol?
So most of the research that I've been exposed to, as a rule of thumb, and Allie, I know you're with me in that everybody is different, and our body is different each week. And so it's like, and at the end of the day, the client's always like, well, tell me what to do. I'm like, all right, we're going to start with this, and then we're going to assess. But as a general rule, 3 times a week, we want to get that cardiovascular workout where we're really taxing our system, the full kind of breadth of our system. So yes, getting our heart rate up, getting that depletion of glycogen in our muscles, which is that jumpstart of the whole system to kind of replenish our muscles. So as a rule of thumb, we want to do that 3 times a week. And I think, as you alluded to, depending on someone's goals, if we have a client who, like you said, is trying to just be as healthy as possible for as long as possible, and they already are happy with their body composition. So they're maybe trying to add some muscle, but generally speaking, maybe not trying to lower the amount of fat that they have on their body, because it's very different, as I know you know, a very different protocol if you're trying to change your body composition than if your goal is to just be as healthy as possible. Because, if you're trying to burn fat, you are going to have to do more cardiovascular work to kind of tip the scales. But if you're not trying to burn fat, if you do more cardiovascular work, chances are you're going to be cannibalizing your muscle. And so that's why I think generally 3 times a week is a good rule of thumb. And then you want to assess and see how your body is responding. But I know that the recent research on the Carol bike that ACE did, they did a 3 times a week protocol and compared that to a 5 times a week protocol of like a steady state, 30-minute workout. So 150 minutes versus under 30 minutes. And Carol had vastly better results.
Interesting. And so obviously you recommend more, you said you recommend more for someone that wants to change their body composition. So in that case, and once again, I know it depends on the person, but is there a sort of any research done based on that?
I haven't personally seen any really good research that kind of, gives me a good, like based on the research, a good protocol. Anecdotally, I can say that for each person, this one really, really does depend, right? I know you know too, everybody is so different. But the Carol does have a fat burn setting where you can do either a 10-minute or a 20-minute interval ride. So again, it's still high intensity interval, but it's a different protocol than the Wingate sprint protocol. And so on that one, it's 8 seconds of sprints, 12 seconds rest, 8 second sprints, 12-second rest. And that's going to be either 30 sprints or 60 sprints. Now, personally, if someone is otherwise healthy, right? Because again, we need to take everything into account about a person. But if someone's otherwise healthy, then I would say start doing that 3 times a week and assess. And, when I say assess too, I'm sure we're going to get to talk about some of the things that we do to assess how our recovery is going, because we don't want to overstress our system. Because if we overstress our system, it can actually work against us when it comes to our goals. And so, using all the information that we have available to us, which heart rate variability is one of the main markers that I really rely on these days. I think it's the best data point that we have access to see how we're doing on our recovery. But we really want to honor that, because we want everybody to understand that there's this, catabolic and anabolic phase of working out where we're stressing out the system, but then we have to give the system enough time to recover and adapt and improve to get the results. And if we don't do that, that's when we're heading into a place of disease, or an overuse injury or something like that. And so, to start 2 or 3 times a week on a fat burn protocol, I think is responsible. As again, if you're doing a body composition program, you really, of course, want to be looking really closely at nutrition, about sleep, and about stress, because all of that plays such a big part in our body holding on to more weight.
Yeah. And I love how HACKD really sort of takes all of that on board. And tell us a bit about your recovery, what you offer there.
Sure. So we have a bunch of fun toys, and some of it is definitely more on the edge of kind of the latest science. We have things like the Normatec, which are the air compression boots, which I think most people can just, they can get their head around that. You're going to get this air massage and it feels great. It's undeniable. We have an IR sauna, so that heat therapy, that feels great. There's a lot of different benefits that, again, research shows some of the benefits of sauna. There's not such great research that seems to point to a lot of other things like improving your sleep and stress and stuff like that. But From a research perspective, we know for a fact that it improves your cardiovascular fitness, your heart health, but it just feels good. It's kind of undeniable. Most people understand that the sauna is going to help with their relaxation and their recovery. We also have the near infrared light panels. We have the Joovv, which has both the near infrared and it's the near infrared and the infrared. So you can see the red ones, and those are for the skin and hair, and then the ones you can't see are for the deeper tissues. But on a cellular level, those lights are increasing the amount of ATP we have in our cells, which helps the repair and recovery process. And it helps overall cellular function and then systemic function. So there's a lot of benefits to the red light and a lot of stuff. I'm like, try it for yourself and see what your body's telling you. Does your body feel better afterwards? Is it saying, oh yeah, I liked that? Then listen to it, right? We have things like the NanoVie, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with the NanoVie, but it uses a specific frequency of light to mimic our body's natural signal that our cells use when we're under oxidative stress. And so our body kind of gets faked out into thinking we're under oxidative stress, but we're not. So our cells start making the good free radicals, which really can speed up recovery, especially after a big event. Like if you had a big sporting event or something that after you travel, anything that's going to kind of overtax your system, it'll help speed up the recovery from that. So we have things like that. We also have sound therapy. We do a lot of different things that, are more kind of on the edge. But the thing about it, once you try them, it's kind of undeniable how good you feel. And I'm really trying to help people understand that prioritizing recovery isn't being lazy. It's an integral part of our adaptive response where our body is getting stronger, our body is getting healthier. And let's face it, as we age, it's naturally going in the other direction. So we all want to prioritize as much of this good support and turning back the clock that we can.
Yeah, look, that's great. And I wasn't aware of the NanoVie. So I love the Joovv, and I've got a full body Joovv at home as well. But tell us more about the NanoVie. Is that how do you actually use that?
So it kind of looks like you're breathing in maybe a humidifier. There's a mouthpiece that just kind of blows in your face, or you can hook up a cannula that you can breathe through your nose. Looks like you're kind of in the hospital. So it's not the best look, but you're basically just breathing in vaporized water. And that water has gone through a chamber where it had a specific frequency of light shown on it. So you're basically just breathing in vapor. And it was something I learned about on a podcast. And then I found someone in New York City who had one, and I tried it out, and I immediately had an undeniable response to it. I'm a big meditator. I've definitely tuned into more of the subtle energetic experiences that I have in my body, how my brain feels, how my energy feels, and I had a pretty profound response to the NanoVie right away. So some people, when you use it, you have a kind of an undeniable healing, let's just say, or being in flow state where there's just more synchronicity and things are just kind of flowing. Some people like to use it before they go to work because it seems to help them be very productive and on point all day. Some people like to use it, like my husband, we have one at home as well. And my husband likes to use it right before sleep. He thinks it helps him fall asleep and sleep much better. So, I tell everyone, try it for yourself and see how you feel. Some people feel nothing. It doesn't necessarily mean it isn't doing anything. The research is pretty clear about how it works and that it is indeed doing it. We just may not be as tuned into the subtle nature of our body because we've just got a lot of bigger external things going on, and we may not be as tuned into our body's innate wisdom. Try it. I always say, try it for yourself. Don't take my word for it.
Exactly. That's great. And look, we wouldn't be complete if we didn't talk about your resistance training and the ARX. And I'd love for you to. We've actually interviewed Mike from ARX and on the show, and so we'll put that in the show notes as well. But how do you use the ARX, and what are the benefits of it?
So I use the ARX for maximal force training. So the way that I use it is just every second that I am on that machine. And I usually use it for the big five. So I'll do a leg press, a chest press, a row, overhead press, and a pull down. Sometimes I'll do a torso flexion or torso extension or just isolate, the biceps or triceps. But usually I'll do the big five. And the protocol I use most often for myself is super slow. So 10 seconds in each direction. So 10 seconds on the eccentric, 10 seconds on the concentric. And just in case anyone, is listening and isn't familiar with those terms, the eccentric is when you're lowering the weight and the concentric is when you're lifting the weight. And our muscles, as I know you know, are a lot stronger lowering weight than they are lifting weight. And the thing about the ARX is that it's an isokinetic machine. So that means it's just moving at one speed, whatever speed you set it at. And then we, as the exerciser, we're the ones that are acting against the machine. So unlike traditional weight training, where the weights are acting against us and we're kind of acting, against gravity, the machine is allowing us each moment to be the one creating the resistance. And then the machine tracks it. So each moment you're getting this beautiful graph that shows exactly how much work you did. Each rep, each moment, both eccentric and concentric. I have no rest usually in my protocol. So I'll do usually a minute and 45 seconds of just nonstop, super slow back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's like usually 5.5 reps. And the whole time it's really similar to childbirth, not the painful, physical part, but the exertion level that you're getting so far out of your comfort zone that you're proving to yourself that you're even stronger than you could have ever imagined that you are. So that's the way that I use it. And funnily enough, when I first got the machines, that's how I trained everybody on it, because I'm like, isn't this great? And it took a little while for me to realize that the vast majority of kind of the average person who walks into HACKD, there's no rush and maybe never any need to use the machine that intensely, because it's a tool and we can use it for so many different kind of goals. And so for someone who is looking for longevity, not necessarily about, efficiency and maximal, muscle mass and adding strength and fatigue in the least amount of time, someone can put like an extra 30 seconds on the set and never feel like you're that far out of your comfort zone where you start to kind of self-sabotage, but you stay in this working zone. You'll still do a tremendous amount of work in a very efficient and safe way. And so it's able to get such elevated results from a strength perspective, a muscle mass perspective, and a metabolic conditioning perspective in one fell swoop. And then, of course, it depends. The metabolic conditioning, it depends on how hard someone works. And sometimes if someone's rehabbing an injury or, coming off of something, maybe we don't ever push them 100%. And then it's really great that we have a Carol right there, because if you put the Carol with the ARX, then you got both the strength and the cardio. But the way that I train on the ARX, you're definitely getting the strength and the cardio all in one fell swoop.
So Pamela, just to confirm, the way you train is you do the 5 compound movements and you do about 5.5 reps of each one, and it's just one set of each, right?
Yes, that's my normal protocol. Now I know and one of my core tenets, it's keep your body guessing. Don't get into a rut. So one of the reasons why I don't plateau is I mix it up. So maybe every now and then I'll put a pause back in, and then I'm going for max strength. Or maybe every now and then I'll make the eccentric faster and the concentric slower, and I'm really going for max concentric burnout. And then sometimes I'll make the concentric really short and make the eccentric really long, and just really, really blow out on those big eccentric loads. So the machine gives us the flexibility to keep our body guessing. But that protocol that we talked about at first, that minute and 45 seconds, super slow, no pause, max effort for the whole time, that's my normal protocol for anybody that is really healthy and looking for the most efficient, effective strength training workout that they can get. And that's pretty much the Body by Science protocol.
And then how often you just do that? Once a week?
So some weeks it's once a week, sometimes it's twice a week. And again, it varies because, any given day, you may have slept poorly, you may be dealing with something. So I try to have the flexibility, since I'm there, to schedule my workouts on days when I am feeling like I'm at the top of my game. But sometimes, maybe I have a virus and I've been sick for a week and a half, and I want to at least do, the best that I can. And so maybe I don't have a super, super, high output, because these machines track all the data. So I can see what my max strength numbers are. I can see what my intensity numbers are. I can see what my total output numbers are. And so I have a really good sense of how much work I did. AKA, one would say, how good was the workout? How much work did I do any given workout? And so, sometimes I won't, hit like an all-time high on total output. And then maybe I'll be like 2 days later, I want to do it again. Or sometimes I have a super, super, super high workout and I want to take 8 days off. Or sometimes I have a super, super high workout, and then 2 days later, I'm feeling awesome again, and I'll do it again. It's like,
And
it's like a
Pamela,
consistent inconsistency.
it's interesting. Do you think it really depends on the person and their recovery ability?
Absolutely.
Because for someone like myself, like I recover by the next day no matter what I do. At least up until now, anything that I've ever done, I've been okay to do whatever the next day.
Good for you.
But in saying that, what do you call recovered? Because obviously there's neuromuscular recovery versus physical recovery versus mental recovery. So there's also an argument to say, well, actually, no, you haven't recovered. And so how do you treat clients like me that say, oh, no, I'm fine to go the next day?
Well, first of all, I always empower my clients to learn to trust themselves, right? And so if you came in, Allie, and you're like, no, I swear I can do back-to-back days, I would, and if you really wanted to, I would let you. And then we would see, the proof is in the pudding, right? And so we'd see what the response was, whether you had the capacity to really do what you think you can do. Because the cool thing, right? Our brain always plays tricks on us. But one of the things we say, even though it's not entirely true, we say data don't lie. I mean, data does lie sometimes, right? And so we take the data always as kind of I use the slalom skier kind of gait analogy, where you're using the data to kind of keep you on track, but you're not going to stop and like look at the data. You're going to keep flowing with it and trust the process, own the process. So I have had some clients who've insisted that they want to go again 1 or 2 days later. And if they're really, I challenge them, but if they really are adamant, I'll let them try it and see, because testing is always the best. And then, because then you have the numbers of the results, right? Testing is always a good way to try. And then the other thing is, if we track our HRV, if we can track what our resting heart rate is while we're sleeping, how long it takes for our resting heart rate to get down, those are really good markers of recovery. I don't know if you use an Oura ring or if you've talked about Oura rings. I mean, so if your heart rate doesn't get down to its, resting heart rate until the end of the night, that's a really good marker that your body's fighting to recover still. If it gets down, the first moment your head hits the pillow, that you seem to be recovered and you're getting to rest right away. You're not doing this repair work while you sleep. So we're lucky enough now to have some windows into what's going on with our body that are a little more objective. We can talk about, really how much we can trust the Oura Ring data and really how much we can trust all these different, instruments that we now have. And I take everything with a grain of salt. Ultimately, in a perfect world, we'd all be masters and we would be able to tune into our innate body wisdom and we're like, no, I don't have any inflammation. I'm completely recovered and I'm ready to go again. But there has been a good amount of research, and I don't know the exact nature of the research, but ARX, gave us the feedback that on average, the average person needs between 4 and 8 days after a real maximal, strength training workout on the ARX to have the recovery, which means that, you get that oxidative stress, you get those micro tears in your muscles, then your body is able to repair itself and then get stronger, right? That's what's going on in there. It's simplification, but that's what's going on in there. And so if you go again before the body has finished that process, you're not going to get the full benefit of the strength training. And so the numbers don't lie. And I can tell you that early on when we first got the ARX machines, I was so excited to have them. I was going too much and I was frustrated that I was plateauing and I wasn't seeing the gains. And I looked back and I was like, oh, I'm really only giving myself like 2 days of rest, 3 days of rest. I'm going like 3 times a week because I was so excited. But then I pulled back and I gave myself more rest, and the results speak for themselves. And so that's one of the cool things about having the data is that you can test things out. And just because something is one way one week doesn't mean it's that way the next week. Like our bodies are very complicated. Nothing is in a vacuum. So there may be 1 week where you do recover really quick in 4 days, but then there may be another week where 8 days later, you're still not fully recovered. And you may feel great because I get the sense that you're a lot like me, Allie, and that we're like, super optimistic and positive and have this resilient can-do attitude. Like, no, I'm fine. And none of us are perfect. And so we want to keep, checking ourselves, being like, okay, well, what are the ways that I can indeed tell if I'm recovered? And having the data is really helpful.
Absolutely. And when you refer to the data, obviously you're talking about the strength gains that you're going to get when you do recover properly. Do you also see, and maybe you can give us some examples of clients, obviously not using their names necessarily, of body composition changes?
Yeah. And so, the body composition changes are more complex. I think my experience is there's so many different pieces of the puzzle as to why it is that someone's body is holding on to the weight. I've had some clients who it was really a function of lifestyle choices. And once we got their lifestyle choices, and I'm talking about exercising and what they're eating and, sleep and, some basic things. Once we got that under control, you see the weight just pour off them. And I've got a client who I think she's down 60 pounds and just, huge change. Then we have other clients who are doing the work. I know they're doing the work because we have all the data, and I know they're eating healthy because we're talking about that too. And I know my clients, like I'm sure similar to you, it's you care so much about your clients that you become close, and you can kind of call them out on their BS and hold them accountable and do all that. And so I know that they're eating healthy, and the weight isn't coming off. And so that's cool too, not cool in the sense that we're not getting the results that we expect, but then we know we need to look into something else. And so one client I'm thinking of, after 6 weeks of really knowing how hard she was working, seeing how both her strength training numbers and her cardiovascular fitness numbers were improving, but we weren't seeing the results on the body composition side. That's when, she went and saw an endocrinologist. And that was, kind of what highlighted another area that she needed support in, and then was able to get that support, and now is seeing the changes that we would expect, or at least not quite as fast, but we're now getting the results. And so that's the thing, that's why, gosh, and I'm sure you share all these sentiments around feeling ashamed, feeling like something's wrong with me because I can't lose this weight, or it's not coming off, or, something, I must be doing something wrong. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. And our bodies are very complicated. And, I say honestly that love is always the answer, to really love our bodies and ask our bodies, okay, like what do you need? Because sometimes we need to rest. Sometimes people are exercising too much, putting too much stress on their system. And that's why they're not getting the results. And that's why with the data, it can really help us tweak the program to personalize it and get the results, and see if we need to talk to other specialists and refer out and have other support, because fitness isn't just about exercising, and it isn't just about food. There's a lot of other stuff, mental health, spiritual health, metabolic health that can be going on.
Yeah, and I love that you've written this book as well, just to show that, it's the physical, mental, and the spiritual all coming together.
Yeah.
And can you share with us the 5 pillars?
Sure. So the big 5 for inner strength, and none of it is groundbreaking. I think we all can relate to these concepts, and at least can relate to practicing them wherever we are on the spectrum or the depth of the integration of the practices. But the 5 pillars of the practices are gratitude, courage, compassion, surrender, and then openness/curiosity. So those are the 5 practices. They all support one another. So what's so cool about it is that if you're struggling to find gratitude, you can practice courage, or you can practice compassion, or practice surrender, or practice openness and curiosity. And that will help you practice gratitude. And same goes for all of the other ones. Like if you're having trouble practicing courage, you can practice gratitude, and it will loosen up spaciousness around being brave. And surrender, I think, is the toughest of all the 5 pillars, because all of us, unless you're a realized master, we have trauma in us that is on some level making us feel like we're not safe. And so to surrender, to really kind of let go and let God or the universe or whatever you want to put a word on it, but to really surrender and allow the flow, the co-creative force to help us manifest, to help us kind of get across the finish line. It is not easy stuff. So practicing gratitude, practicing courage, practicing compassion, both self-compassion and compassion for other people, all of life. And then practicing openness and curiosity, like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I'm so curious. I'm so open. And then that helps us surrender, because when something happens, especially if something's really painful, maybe triggering, make us scared, we need to somehow find a way to not constrict. It's that constriction, that contracting, that tightening up process that is the exact opposite of what we need to do in the face of those big challenges. We need to find a way to be brave and be bold and really tap into higher levels of wisdom and just take that action in the face of those scary, painful times. And it's not easy. And that's what stress is to me. I don't really subscribe to that term in the sense of, there's this perfect amount of stress where you have enough challenge in life, but not so much that it's overloading the system. It's the perfect challenge to keep you growing. But if you have too much challenge, that's kind of the stress. It's like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling like I'm getting beaten down. I feel like I'm getting drained. I'm feeling, disconnected from passion and joy. That's stress. And the studies are really clear on that stress is worse than smoking 5 cigarettes a day, or kind of unmanaged stress. But most people have no idea what to do about that. It's like, we're human. We're overachievers. Of course we're stressed. And so the secret sauce is like embracing the challenge, embracing the discomfort, but not subscribing to the idea that anything is out of alignment or imperfect, that there is this imperfect flow of how life kind of ebbs and flows, but trusting and loving and owning the process of that, and then trusting and loving and surrendering kind of to the unknown or what is unknowable to our mind. That's kind of the art of all of this.
Yeah. And Pamela, do you think the breath work that you've done has been the real sort of thing in your life that's helped you put all this together?
Yeah. So the combination of breath work and meditation has really been the biggest source of transformation for me. And it's funny because I did a little bit of breathwork stuff, but then it was really meditation that got me to this next level. And then over the last 6 months, it's been a much more intense, focused breathwork practice that has really gotten me up to this kind of latest level. And so, I highly recommend people exploring both of those things. In a lot of ways, I do believe that breath work is a simpler, more directed path than meditation. Maybe to get going, I do think that meditation is super important and a super powerful tool as well. But I think people have to find their own path, because there's so many different paths to finding this inner strength, finding this grace, finding this connection to, a higher consciousness. And I think that people, if we just keep seeking when we feel called to seek, like something doesn't seem right, I'm going to keep looking. Something doesn't seem right. This practice is kind of helping a little. Okay, I'm going to stick with it. And that, for me, when I first tried to meditate, I was like, no way, this is not my thing. This is too much. Because I had sat the first time in this big group and there was like a 20-minute thing and I was going batty. But then when we broke it down and we were doing 1-minute meditations, I started experiencing really, really, really good feelings. It was undeniable how much it was shifting my energy and empowering me. And so that's when I committed to 1 minute to 2 minutes to 5 minutes to 10 minutes and eventually 18 minutes a day for a bunch of years. And that very much was a transformative practice that teed up everything that I've really done in the last 3 years. I definitely wouldn't be who I am, being how I am, creating how I am if it weren't for my meditation and breath work.
And so it's almost like HIIT meditation, isn't it?
Breath work is like HIIT meditation. Yeah, there's no hiding from that. So it's breath work.
And you mentioned that you started off with 1 minute and worked your way up to 18. Was that all guided meditation?
So it was. I went to yoga teacher training at Ishta on 11th Street. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that yoga studio. Alan Finger. He is a wonderful, wonderful teacher, and he was the teacher at Ishta, and then he also has guided meditations on Spotify that are a really great kind of entry into this deeper meditation, because ultimately with meditation, the first phase is focused concentration, that you're able to keep your attention where the heck you want it. It's like having a puppy. That freaking little thing is all over the place. It does not understand. You got to pee and poo on the mat. So you just keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back, keep bringing it back. It's the same thing with the beginning phase of meditation. You're listening to a guided meditation and you're just using all of your effort to notice when your brain runs off and bring it back. And it's really your attention. It feels like your brain. But what starts to happen is you realize your brain never stops. Like thoughts keep coming like clouds across the sky. What starts to shift is your ability to notice the thoughts, but not get sucked away by them. And you start to realize, wait a minute, I am not my thoughts. I'm the one watching the thoughts. And I get to choose whether I want to follow this thought or not, whether I think this thought is true or not, whether I feel like this is an empowering thought or not. And you start to get better and better at keeping your attention where you want it while you meditate. And then the next step is effortless concentration. So while you're going through this, you're trying phase, you remember that, well, eventually I'm supposed to be able to kind of like let go trying, and I'll just be able to stay there without any effort. And that is a magical moment when you get better at that. It's almost like learning to fly or learning to swim. Like in the beginning, you need to have your feet on the ground of the pool or holding onto the side, but eventually you learn that you can swim without like fighting it. You can kind of just float. And it becomes somewhat effortless if you're doing like a, maybe just a back float or, a floating kind of thing. You can kind of effortlessly float. And it's like that with meditation, because once it becomes effortless, that's when things start to open up and you start to experience transcendence. Ultimately, hopefully you experience samadhi, where you just kind of go off into the bliss and maybe become one with the bliss. And that's when it gets really good.
Awesome. Well, we'll include Alan Finger's Spotify in the show notes as well. That sounds great. And Pamela, where to from here with HACKD?
Yeah. So I'm super excited. We're in the process of vetting this HACKD 2.0. So this first version of HACKD was a minimum viable product. I did it all on my own, funding wise. And so this next version is going to be the culmination of everything we've learned over the last year. Breathwork is going to be one of the core foundational offerings. The breathwork person, his name is Sage Rader. His website is New Mantra, and I'll give you the link to include in the show notes as well. I'm super excited about including that as a core offering. And because there is things like a heart rate variability monitor and things that you can use to kind of connect science and data with the breath and really understand how powerful it is. But at the end of the day, gosh, if we work out hard, if we have the right amount of movement in our life and get our cardiovascular fitness, our strength training fitness, and then we get the recovery piece with the breath work, it's so transformative. And then everybody's empowered to live their best life. And so that's really where we're going, is to open this next location where it's really going to aesthetically really fit, the awesomeness of what it is that we're doing in the space. And then I want to empower other people to open their own hacks or open more hacks in the city, but just spread as much wisdom and empowerment as we can. That's the mission.
That's awesome. And Pamela, before I let you go, I've got to ask you a bit of a personal question.
Sure.
Do you have a tattoo?
I do. I have 2 tattoos.
What are they?
So my first tattoo I got when I was 18, I was at Yale and I was like, holy cow, everyone's taking themselves so seriously here. I need to get a tattoo immediately to just, I was in this whole period of, I am not like everyone else. And it was like kind of a rebellious thing. But I have a beautiful, simple tribal sun on my back. And that I feel really, really, really good about, because light and sun and power, and it's good. And then my other tattoo, I had 2 tattoo rules. My 2 tattoo rules were, don't get a spontaneous tattoo and don't get any cartoon characters. And I somehow managed to break both of those rules in one fell swoop. I took one of my girlfriends to get a tattoo, also at 18. And as I was sitting there waiting for her to get her tattoo, I looked up on the wall and I saw Thumper, the bunny from Bambi. I freaking love Thumper. I'm like, a bunny rabbit is kind of like my spirit animal. I don't know if you saw Zootopia with the kids, but Judy Hopps. I mean, that's kind of like me. And so I have a really adorable tattoo of Thumper laughing, which reminds me to not take myself seriously. Don't take life seriously. It's meant to be playful. We're meant to laugh. We're meant to laugh. It's meant to be lighthearted. And so that is on my hip.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that and everything that you share with us today. And
Pleasure.
Look forward to seeing what else happens with HACKD.
Oh, thank you so much for taking the time and inviting me on. It was such a pleasure and an honor.
For all the resources and show notes from today's episode, please go to www.ali.fitness. If you liked today's episode, please show your appreciation by going to iTunes, give us a 5-star review and subscribe.